Welcome to Lesson 10. This is the last formal lesson in this course, and we will be looking at a couple of mini projects that we will solve step by step. First, we will be creating a guess the number game, where a computer guesses a random number and a user is given several tries until they get it correct. So, to start with for the guess the number game, we should first import the randint library from the random module. So from random import randint. And we can just import randint because we won't need any of the other features of the random library. Now, what we basically want to do is for the program to choose a random number in a certain range. Then as the user guesses the number, we want it to give the user a hint if their guess is too high or too low. And that way the user can eventually guess the final number. So we can create a function for that. So let's make def guess underscore number. Now we need one argument for this, which is num, which is basically going to be the amount of numbers in the range from 1 to something. So again, we can use randint to choose the random number. So random underscore num, which the user has to eventually guess, equal to randint between 1 and num. So what this will do is basically choose a number between 1 and whatever number is specified. Next, we can initialize the guess variable to see what the user guesses, which we can eventually take as an input, and also initialize the count variable to see how many tries the user takes to guess the number. Now, since we want the user to get an infinite amount of tries till they finally guess the number, we'll use a while loop. So while the guess, which is the user guess, is not equal to the random number, which is defined by the computer, the while loop keeps going. So now every time in the while loop at the start, we will ask the user for a guess. We can use int input to convert it to an integer straight away. Please guess a number between 1 and then we can add our num. Oops, I forgot to add the quote there. So we can do that. Another comma there, and then we can put a colon and a new line. Now that we have our user guess, we can then use conditional statements in order to give the user hints. So if the guess is smaller than random num, then it prints the number you have guessed is too low. Please guess again. And then it increases the count by 1 because that was one user guess. And then we'll add an elif the guess is greater than random underscore num. Then we'll basically just copy paste this and modify it so that it says the number you have guessed is too high. Then we'll add the last elif for if the guess is exactly equal to the random number, and then we can print yay. Let's say you guessed the correct number, and then we'll say what the number was. And we can also say how long they took to guess it. So print you guessed the number in, there we put our count variable that's constantly getting increased with each guess, and then guesses. Now we have our function here that basically goes through and lets the user guess a random number. So now to execute this and have our function actually work, we can call it here with maybe 10. So the computer takes a random number between 1 and 10. Now, before running this, what we want to change is up here in line 8. With this input, if we use the commas to concatenate this number to the string, it'll give us an error because it actually separates it into 3 arguments instead of 1. So instead of using commas, we should use the plus sign to concatenate the number. And we can go ahead and get rid of this so it stays on the same line. And then lastly, we should convert this to a string. So again, it concatenates without an error. So now let's go ahead and see how it works. Okay, so it asks me the number between 1 and 10. Let's guess 8. Okay, so it's too high. Let's get 4. It's too low, maybe 6. Too high again. So then it has to be 5. Yep, the number is 5 and it took us 3 guesses to guess. Alright, for our second mini project, let's take a look at how we can make a simple password generator with Python. And this will basically rearrange a string with different letters into a certain number of a certain length of passwords, which can be user defined. Okay, so let's see how we can make this password generator. Again, since we need to randomize a choice out of a string, we'll need to use the random library, so let's import that. Next, we can print a little welcome message. Welcome to your password generator. And then maybe enter a new line after that. And so what we can do is create a string, let's call it characters. And I've got this copied down, but you guys can just copy this down from the video. So these include most of the ASCII characters that are used in passcodes. And next we can take a user input for the number of passwords that we need to make. So int input number of passwords to generate. There we go. And then we can make a length variable that asks the input of the length of the passwords. So now that we've got all of this, we can then print a message. These are the generated passwords. Okay, now that we've got this, to actually create the passwords, we can basically just concatenate them on the end of a string. So let's create a passwords string. And what we can do is set it equal to just a clear string for now. Then for I in range number, so this is the overall thing, the number of passwords to generate. In that we can nest another for loop for C in range length. So this adds a character every time to the password, and then it basically just concatenates that to the end of the password. So we can do passwords plus equal to, now here's where we use the random library, random.choice and then characters, the name of our string. So this basically chooses one out of all of these characters to add to the passwords. So, and then after it's done with that, in the for loop we can do passwords. We can concatenate a new line so that every new password gets created on the same line. So let's try this program out and see how it works. So number of passwords to generate, let's say generate 4 passwords of maybe 6 characters each. And there we go, 4 passwords, and each of them are 6 characters on a new line. And that is it for this video. We looked at how to solve a couple of mini projects with Python. In the next lesson, we'll be looking at a small little game that you can create, and later I'll also provide a guide of how to do it in case you are confused.